The streets of Lagos pulsed with their usual morning chaos. Cars honking in frustration, vendors shouting their prices, and the thick scent of roasted plantain mixed with car exhaust. In the back seat of a sleek black SUV, Robert Okoro leaned against the window, half listening to the hum of the city as his eyes flicked across his phone screen. He was dressed in a tailored navy suit, every detail sharp and polished. On paper, Robert had it all: wealth, power, and respect. But this morning felt different. Maybe it was the way the sunlight pierced through the dusty air, or how the traffic crawled slower than usual. Or maybe it was fate. The SUV jolted slightly as it hit a pothole. Robert looked up, annoyed at first, until something outside the window made his breath catch. At the edge of the sidewalk, beneath a struggling tree, sat a woman. Her clothes were worn and faded, her hair wild with the wind, and her arms protectively cradled two small children, boys, maybe 3 or 4 years old. They clung to her silently, their eyes hollow, their faces streaked with dirt and something deeper: hunger. Robert's heartbeat skipped. His eyes narrowed. There was something about her, something disturbingly familiar. The angle of her jaw, the way she leaned forward to shield her boys from the world. A memory stirred, sharp and unexpected. No, it couldn't be. "Stop the car," he said suddenly, his voice tighter than usual. "Sir," the driver replied, glancing through the rearview mirror. "Pull over, now." The driver obeyed, maneuvering to the curb. Before the vehicle even came to a full stop, Robert stepped out, shoes clicking against cracked concrete. He walked quickly, his heart drumming in his ears. She didn't see him at first. She was too busy adjusting a tattered scarf around one child's shoulders. Robert stopped a few steps away. For a moment, he just looked. His chest tightened. "Amaka?" he said quietly. The woman flinched. Her head turned slowly, as if afraid of what she might see. When her eyes met his, everything froze. The city noises faded into silence. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, finally, "Robert?" He hadn't heard that voice in over a decade, but he would never forget it. Not the girl who had once laughed like she had the world in her hands. "It's you," she said, her voice hoarse. Her eyes flicked down, embarrassed. "Why are you here?" "I should ask you the same," he replied, voice low, stunned. She looked away quickly. "Don't. Just please walk away. Pretend you didn't see me." But Robert didn't move. His gaze shifted to the children now nestled tightly into her side. One wiped at his nose. The other stared at the ground like he'd given up expecting anything from it. "Are they yours?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Amaka nodded slowly. "What happened to you?" he asked. His voice was gentle but filled with something else. Guilt, maybe. Or regret. She chuckled bitterly. Life. Life happened, Robert. A silence hung between them. He hadn't seen her since university, since she'd been the girl everyone noticed. Confident, beautiful, untouchable. Back then, he was invisible to her. Just another quiet boy with big dreams, and now he took a tentative step forward. "Amaka, come with me. I can help." She bristled. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity," he said. "It's something else. You shouldn't be here. Not like this." She looked down at her boys. One was coughing now, small shoulders shaking. Her hands trembled as she reached to soothe him. She was breaking right in front of him and trying desperately to pretend she wasn't. "I don't have anyone left," she whispered. "So please, don't offer things you don't mean. I've had enough empty promises." Robert crouched to her level, meeting her eye. "This isn't a promise. It's a decision. Right here. Right now. Let me help you. For their sake." Looked at him for a long time, pain and hesitation warring across her face. Then her eyes landed on her son's. and something inside her cracked. "Just for tonight," she said, barely above a whisper. Robert nodded. "That's enough." He reached out a hand. Slowly, she took it. Her grip was colder than he expected. The twins didn't speak as they followed her into the car. They were too tired, too used to disappointment. As the SUV pulled away from the curb, Amaka stared out the window, clutching her sons tight. Robert sat beside her in silence, glancing at her every few seconds, unsure of what to say. She looked nothing like the girl he remembered, and yet, in her silence, he recognized something deeply familiar, a strength buried under years of suffering. The driver took a detour. Robert pulled out his phone and sent a message to his house staff. "Prepare something warm, something good. 3 guests tonight." The road stretched ahead, smooth now, leading away from the noise and the pain, and Amaka, sitting beside the man she'd once dismissed as forgettable, had no idea her life had just shifted in a way she could never have imagined. The car's silence pressed against Amaka like a second skin. Her boys had fallen asleep with their heads on her lap, their small breaths slow and uneven. She kept her eyes fixed on the passing streets outside the window, hands wrapped tightly around their fragile bodies. Robert watched her from the other side, careful not to say too much. Every time he looked at her, he saw flickers of the past, her laughter echoing across the university courtyard, her eyes sharp with ambition. But this woman beside him now was different, hardened, closed, cautious. When they pulled up to the house, his house, Amaka froze. The building before them was large and elegant, softly lit from the inside like a dream she didn't believe she deserved. She hesitated. I can't go in there." Robert turned to her, gentle. "Why not?" "It's too much," she said. "People like me don't belong in places like that." He opened the door, stepping out first. Then he turned, offering his hand again. "Tonight, you do." Reluctantly, she slid out of the car with her children, one cradled in each arm. The boys blinked sleepily at the mansion, their mouths slightly open. The moment she stepped inside, the warmth hit her like a memory she'd tried to forget. Clean air, soft lighting, the faint scent of fried plantains, and something sweet coming from the kitchen. Amaka's shoulders tensed. Robert called out softly to a housekeeper. "Is dinner ready?" "Just finished, sir." She guided them to the dining area. The table was already set. Plates of steaming jollof rice, fried plantain, bowls of pepper soup, and chilled water waiting in elegant glasses. Amaka stopped at the edge of the room. "We shouldn't," Robert interrupted, calm but firm. "Sit. Down, Amaka." Her boys didn't wait for her permission. They climbed into chairs clumsily, eyes wide. As soon as food was placed before them, they started eating like it was a race against time. Amaka remained standing, arms crossed. Robert motioned to the seat across from him. "Please." After a moment, she sat, slowly, still tense. She stared at her plate like it was a test. Then, carefully, she picked up a spoon and brought a small bite of rice to her mouth. The flavor, rich, spicy, real, hit her hard. Too real. Her eyes welled before she could stop them. She turned her face slightly, wiping away a tear with the back of her hand. Robert saw, but said nothing. He simply poured her a glass of water and slid it toward her. She blinked, then whispered, "Thank you." After dinner, the housekeeper led the boys to a guest room where she helped them wash up and change into soft pajamas pulled from a spare closet. Amaka stood in the hallway outside, arms wrapped around herself. Robert approached quietly. "They'll sleep better tonight," he said. She nodded but didn't look at him. This can't be permanent." "I didn't say it had to be." "I mean it, Robert. Don't get ideas. I'm not looking for charity." "It's not charity," he replied. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were sharp again. "Then what is it? Guilt? Pity? I don't want to owe anyone anything." "You don't," he said softly. "You owe nothing. Just rest." She flinched at the word. Rest. It felt foreign. He gestured toward another guest room. "You can stay here tonight. Clean clothes are inside. A shower if you want it." Her face hardened. "Just tonight." He nodded. "Just tonight." Amaka stepped into the room. The door clicked shut behind her. Inside, she stood motionless. Everything was too clean. The bed too soft. The silence too kind. She peeled off her worn clothes, turned on the shower, and stepped in. The water hit her skin like heat from a sunrise. She stood there for a long time, letting it wash over her, pretending it could rinse away the shame too, when she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel. She found a set of clean, modest pajamas folded on the bed. She slipped them on, combed her fingers through her wet hair, and stepped toward the bed. But she didn't lie down. Instead, she crouched by the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to see the city lights in the distance. She watched for a long time, her eyes searching the skyline. "Just tonight," she whispered. But something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to name, hoped for more. The next morning arrived gently. Sunlight filtered through pale curtains, as soft as breath. For the first time in months, Amaka didn't wake to the sounds of city horns, footsteps, or hunger pangs. Instead, she woke to silence, and it scared her. She sat up slowly, her heart racing. It took a moment to remember where she was. The room was still dim, the sheets clean and untouched except where she had rested. Her hands clutched the fabric, uncertain. Had she really slept the entire night without interruption? She glanced around, eyes adjusting. The pajamas were still loose around her frame, but the smell of soap on her skin reminded her she had bathed properly. She hadn't done that in a long time. She stood, barefoot, and walked down the hall. The smell of breakfast, eggs, something, fried, maybe sausage, drifted to meet her. Her stomach growled before she could quiet it. She found her sons already at the table, cheeks rounder than the day before. They were halfway through plates of toast, eggs, and pap. A housekeeper stood, nearby with a kind smile, gently helping one of them hold his cup steady. "Mommy!" one of the twins called when he saw her. "We ate all of it." Amaka blinked. "All of it?" The younger twin proudly held up an empty plate. "And it was hot!" She felt her throat tighten. Robert entered the dining room from a side door, sleeves rolled up, phone in hand. He smiled when he saw her. "Good morning?" She didn't smile back, not yet. "You didn't have to feed them again." "I didn't do it out of obligation," he said calmly. "They're guests, and they're children." She glanced at the plates, then at her sons. Full, energetic, happy. The transformation was already visible in their faces. One of them had a tiny smear of pap on his chin. Amaka exhaled and took a seat at the table. A plate was quietly placed. In front of her, scrambled eggs, buttered toast, and a warm bowl of akara. She stared at it, then at the glass of orange juice beside it. She didn't move. Robert noticed. "It's okay. Just eat." Amaka picked up her fork slowly, as if afraid someone might snatch it away. She took a bite, and it broke her. The eggs were soft, the akara spicy, familiar. The flavors rushed her, memory, safety, shame, gratitude, all at once. Her hand trembled. She put down the fork and looked away, blinking hard. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "I've spent so long surviving, I forgot what living feels like." Robert didn't reply right away. He let her have the silence. Then, "You don't have to know. Just take one step at a time." After breakfast, the boys were taken outside by a staff member to play in the garden. They returned a short while later, laughing, their hands sticky with mango juice and their shirts dirty with grass stains. It was the happiest Amaka had seen them in a year. She watched them through the window with a bittersweet expression. "They've never had a yard to run in, not like this." "They should," Robert said. "They're just kids." Amaka turned to face him. "Why are you really doing this?" "Because I can," he said. "Because no one helped me when I needed it. And because you were never meant to be forgotten." She frowned. "That girl you knew back in school, she doesn't exist anymore." "Maybe," he said, "but I see her still." Later that evening, as the boys napped upstairs, Robert sat with Amaka in the living room. The house was quiet except for the ticking of a wall clock and the occasional creak of wood settling. She was curled up in the corner of the couch, a blanket over her legs. Her hair was tied back neatly now, her skin clean. But the caution still lingered in her eyes. "This can't last," she said softly. "Why not?" "Because things like this don't happen for people like me. Something always breaks. People leave. Help disappears." Robert leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Maybe this time it doesn't." She stared at the floor. "You don't understand. I've begged. I've gone days without eating so my children could. I've been called names, been ignored, been invisible. I see you now." Amaka looked up sharply. The way he said it. It wasn't casual. It was steady, real. "I see you, Amaka. The strength, the hurt, the mother in you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm just offering something different." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The words lodged in her throat. That night, she tucked her sons into bed, covering them gently as they curled together under a thick blanket. She stood there watching them breathe, their foreheads finally free of worry. She didn't cry this time. Back in her room, she turned off the light and climbed into bed. It was soft, yes, but more than that, it was safe. She stared at the ceiling, fingers spread across the sheets, and then, slowly, her hand curled into a loose fist. For the first time in years, Amaka allowed herself to want something more. She didn't say it out loud, but hope had quietly returned. The evening air was still, and the soft hum of insects buzzed in the background as Amaka stepped out onto the balcony. The boys had fallen, asleep without protest, their bellies full, their faces peaceful. She stood barefoot, arms crossed, eyes on the dark horizon, lost in thought. Behind her, Robert appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. He hesitated before stepping closer. "I wasn't sure if you liked tea," he said, offering her one. Amaka hesitated, then accepted it. The warmth felt strange in her hands, comforting, but foreign. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, not heavy, but expectant. Robert didn't rush her. He sipped quietly and leaned against the balcony railing, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Then she broke the silence. "His name was Amaechi," she said. Robert turned his head slightly. "The boy's father?" Amaka nodded. "We met at a wedding. He was charming, confident, said all the right things. I thought I was smart, thought I could tell when someone was lying." She let out a small, bitter laugh. "But I was 22, still full of hope." She stared into her tea. "He made me feel seen, special, like I mattered. We talked about dreams, about the future. He said he wanted kids, a house by the beach, lazy Sunday mornings. I believed all of it." Robert didn't interrupt. He just listened, his expression unreadable but focused. "When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared. But I was ready to fight for it. I thought he would be too." "What happened?" Robert asked softly. At first he acted excited, but that faded fast. Calls slowed down, then stopped. Messages went unanswered. One day, He just vanished. Her voice cracked. He left like we were nothing. A silence fell again. The sound of her breathing grew heavier. When I told my father, she continued, he exploded. Said I had shamed the family. That I was stupid for getting pregnant without a ring. He told me to leave his house. My mother, she cried, but she didn't stop him. So I left. She paused to sip her tea, her hands shaking. I tried. God knows I tried. I cleaned houses, washed clothes, sold food on the street. Anything to feed my boys. Some days we ate, some days we didn't. Nights were the worst. I had to pretend. I wasn't afraid. Pretend we were safe when we weren't. Robert's fists clenched at his sides. I kept waiting for someone to come find me, my parents, Amechi, anyone. But no one came. Her voice dropped to a whisper. No one. The weight of her words settled like dust in the air. I'm sorry, Robert said quietly. She looked at him, eyes tired but sharp. Don't be. It happened. I survived. He nodded slowly. But you shouldn't have had to. They stood in silence again. This time, Amaka wasn't shrinking away from it. Robert turned toward her. I want to help you get back on your feet. Amaka. Not just tonight, not just food and a bed, I mean long-term. A job, stability. She looked at him, startled. A job? Yes. I run a company. We're always looking for people with integrity, resilience. You've got more strength than most people I know. Amaka scoffed. I've been out of work for years. I've never worked in an office. You'll learn. I'll make sure of it. She shook her head. Why are you doing this? Robert took a step closer. Because I care. Her eyes flickered. Why? We barely knew each other back then. You may not remember, but I do. You walked through life like you owned the sky. You were confident, brave. I saw all that. And I've never forgotten it. She turned away, emotions swirling too fast. That girl is gone. No, he said gently. She's still in there. She's just tired. Amaka's voice cracked. I don't want to depend on anyone again. I can't go through another collapse. You won't. I'm not him, Amaka. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him, eyes searching, vulnerable. Don't make promises you can't keep. I won't, he said. This isn't about saving you. This is about standing beside you. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice so soft it was almost carried away by the breeze. Okay, I'll try. Robert smiled, not out of triumph, but with quiet relief. That's all I need. The lights of the city blinked in the distance like tiny stars, and for the first time in years, Amaka allowed herself to believe she might find her place among them again. The building stood tall and clean against the Lagos skyline, its glass windows reflecting the morning sun. To Amaka, it looked more like a place from someone else's life. She stood at the entrance, shoulders drawn in, hands clutching a borrowed handbag. Her heart pounded. Inside, Robert walked beside her, calm as always. Don't worry, he said quietly. No one here knows. You're past. They're just meeting you for the first time. She gave a short nod, lips pressed tightly together. They stepped into the open plan office. Phones rang, fingers clicked across keyboards, and people moved with confidence and speed. Amaka's chest tightened. Robert gestured toward a small desk near the reception. This will be yours. You'll start by assisting with record keeping and helping the front desk. It's simple work, but important. Simple, important. She swallowed hard. A woman in her late 30s approached, her smile polite but guarded. This is Ifeoma, Robert said. She'll be training you. Ifeoma gave a quick nod. Come, I'll show you the basics. Amaka followed her, feeling like an imposter in her own skin. Her hands shook slightly as she sat down and listened to the instructions. How to log information, how to check the system, how to respond to inquiries. Everything moved fast. Too fast. By midday, she had already entered the wrong data 3 times, nearly deleted an entire spreadsheet, and accidentally spilled water on a printed report. Her face burned with embarrassment as if Aoma clicked her tongue and sighed. Robert, who had been observing from a distance, approached just as she was wiping down the table. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, avoiding his eyes. "Maybe this was a mistake." "No," he said gently. "You're learning. That's not a mistake. It's effort. But I don't belong here. You do now." He didn't say it as a question or a comfort. He said it like a fact. That night, back at the house, Amaka sat at the dining table, her head in her hands. The boys ran past her barefoot, laughing as they chased each other down the hall. One of them paused, peeking around the corner. "Mommy," she looked up. "Did you work today?" She managed a small smile. "I did." He beamed. "Uncle Robert said you're strong. He said we should be proud." Her throat tightened. She nodded. "Then I'll keep trying." The days that followed were not easy. Each morning, she rose early, dressed in the clothes Robert had bought, tied her hair back, and took careful, nervous steps into the office. She wrote down everything Ifeoma said. She asked questions, even when they made her feel foolish. She made more mistakes. She cried once in the bathroom. But she kept going. Week by week, the fog in her mind began to clear. She learned to navigate the system. She discovered shortcuts, developed routines. She even started answering calls with a steady voice. One afternoon, a customer stormed in angry about a missing delivery. Amaka stood frozen at first, but then she remembered what Robert had said: listen first, then solve. She nodded, apologized calmly, took down the details, and passed the issue to the right department. The man left less angry than he arrived. Robert, watching from the corner, nodded in quiet approval. Later that day, he walked past her desk. "I did well." Amaka looked up, surprised. "Really? You didn't panic? You handled it." She allowed herself a brief, proud smile. Back home, the twins were flourishing. They were enrolled in a small private school nearby. Each morning, they waved at her from the car as the driver took them to class. Each evening, they returned full of stories. "Mommy, we learned a song today." Uncle Robert said he'll come to our school play. They had never called anyone uncle before. Now Robert was part of their world. He read to them at night, let them sit on his lap while he worked, and answered their endless questions without impatience. One evening, Amaka passed by the living room and saw the boys curled up next to Robert on the couch. He was helping them build a Lego house, smiling, fully present. She leaned against the wall, just watching. Something unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. Not fear, not survival, peace. Later that night, as she sat by the window in her room, staring at the stars, Amaka allowed herself to whisper a truth she hadn't dared speak aloud. Maybe I can do this. Not just survive. Live. The office was unusually quiet that morning. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Amaka was seated at her desk, sorting invoices, when Robert's assistant rushed in, wide-eyed and breathless. "Sir, there's a man in reception. He's refusing to leave. Says he needs to speak with you urgently. It's personal." Robert glanced up, frowning. "What's his name?" He said, "Amechi." The pen in Robert's hand froze mid-signature. His jaw tightened. "Send him up," he said after a long pause. "And call security, just in case." Amaka was in the back office when she heard raised voices. Then a name she hadn't heard spoken in years. Her blood ran cold. She stepped out just in time to see the man himself stride into Robert's office. Amayachi. He was thinner than she remembered, but his arrogance hadn't aged a day. Still dressed sharply, still walking like the world owed him. Something. She felt her knees lock, her breath catch. For a moment she froze. Robert looked up slowly from his desk, his expression stone cold. "You must be the man who vanished," he said calmly. "The one who left a woman and 2 children to starve." Amayachi smirked. "I'm their father. I came to see my sons." Robert stood. "You have a lot of nerve." Amayachi's smile vanished. "I have rights." "And where were those rights?" "When your children were sleeping on concrete? When they cried from hunger?" "I made mistakes," Amayachi snapped. "But that doesn't mean I stopped being their father." At that moment, Amaka stepped into the doorway. Amayachi turned. Their eyes met. His smug confidence cracked slightly. "Amaka," he said, softer now. "You look." "Don't," she said sharply, voice trembling with rage. "Don't say a word you don't mean." He took a step toward her, arms raised, like it was some kind of reunion. "I've been looking for you," she laughed, bitter and cold. "Looking? You disappeared without a word. No messages, no calls, nothing. My son starved while you played ghost. I was young." "No," she cut him off, stepping closer. "You were a coward. You chose to run. Don't hide behind youth." Amayachi's face hardened again. "You don't get to keep them from me. They're mine." "No," Amaka said, voice rising. "They are mine. I was the one who carried them, fed them, protected them. They've never even heard your voice." "You poisoned them against me?" "I never even mentioned your name," she shot back. "They don't know you exist. That's how present you were in their lives." Robert stepped forward now, his voice calm but sharp. "You're not here for the boys. You're here because you heard they're safe now, fed, clean, happy, and suddenly you remember you're a father." "I have rights," Amayachi said again, fists clenched. Robert leaned forward over his desk. "You had rights. You lost them when you walked away. This isn't a courtroom, but if it were, you'd lose." Amayachi looked at Amaka. Desperation, breaking through the bravado. "I just want to see them. Just once." Amaka shook her head slowly. "No, you don't get that. You don't get to walk in now and claim them like luggage. You had your chance. You buried it." A heavy silence followed. Amayachi's shoulders dropped, finally seeing what he hadn't wanted to admit. He had no power here. He turned back to Robert. "You think you can take my place?" Robert didn't flinch. "I didn't take your place. You left it empty." Security arrived at the door, silent but ready. Robert nodded toward them. "Please escort this man out. If he returns, call the police." Amayachi hesitated one last time, looking at Amaka. Her eyes burned, not with fear, but with finality. "I survived. Without you," she said. "And so will they." Amayachi lowered his gaze. Then, without another word, he let the guards lead him away. When the door closed behind him, Amaka's shoulders slumped. Her hands were trembling. Robert crossed the room in 2 strides. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. I think I am." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from release. The night was still and warm. The city's hum distant and softened by the high walls surrounding. Robert's home. On the balcony, soft lights glowed above a modest outdoor table where 2 mugs of tea sat untouched. Amaka leaned against the railing, gazing out at the stars. Her sons were fast asleep inside, peaceful after a long day of school and laughter. She had just finished reading them a story, one they insisted Uncle Robert had told better the night before. Robert joined her quietly, setting his phone aside and slipping his hands into his pockets. They stood side by side in silence, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. I saw you today, he said finally, his voice low. With that client, you handled everything perfectly. Amaka gave a small smile. I'm learning. You're doing more than that, he said. You're rebuilding every day. She nodded, her eyes still distant. It's strange. This feeling, like something inside me is waking up again. But it's fragile. Not fragile, he said. Just healing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Robert took a deep breath. Amaka, he began, and something in his tone made her turn to him. He wasn't smiling. His face was calm, serious, open in a way she hadn't seen before. I've been holding something in for a while, he said. And tonight, I think I need to say it. She straightened slightly. Robert, what is it? He hesitated, then said, I've loved you for a long time. Since university, actually. Back then, I was invisible to you. You had your dreams, your world, your light. I admired you from a distance. And when I saw you again, on that sidewalk, I couldn't walk away. Her breath caught in her throat. This isn't about pity, he continued. And I don't want to be your savior. I don't want to be a hero in your story. I want to be part of it. As your partner, your equal, if you'll have me. The silence between them suddenly felt louder. Amaka stared at him, heart pounding. Robert, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said quickly. Not tonight. I just needed you to hear it, because it's the truth. She looked away, arms crossed tightly against her chest. I've loved before, she said, voice quiet. I trusted someone who promised everything, and then left me to fight alone. I can't go through that again. I understand, he said. I can't erase what he did. I can't promise that life will never hurt again, but I can promise I'll never leave. Not you, not the boys. Amaka swallowed hard. Her mind raced. Part of her wanted to run, to push away the warmth growing in her chest. But another part, the part that remembered Robert's patience, his steadiness, his presence every single day, that part didn't want to run at all. I don't know if I can give my heart again, she whispered. But I'm not afraid to feel again. Not with you. He stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough that she could feel his presence. I can wait, he said softly. This isn't a race. I'm not going anywhere. Amaka looked at him then, really looked. In his eyes there was no pressure, no desperation, just truth. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel like she had to protect herself. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know what comes next. Then let's find out together, Robert replied. They stood there as the stars blinked overhead. The quiet between them no longer heavy with fear, but full of possibility. Amaka didn't say the words that night, but she didn't need to. For now, she stayed, and that, in itself, was everything. The small road leading into Amaka's childhood village was lined with dust and memories. The air smelled of wood smoke and hibiscus, and every house they passed stirred something inside her, long-buried echoes of laughter, fear, and the girl she used to be. Amaka sat in the passenger seat of Robert's SUV, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. In the back, the twins chattered excitedly, unaware of the storm brewing in their mother's chest. Robert glanced at her as he drove. You don't have to do this. I do, she replied, staring out the window. For them. For me. He nodded. Then I'm with you. Whatever happens. They pulled up to a modest, weather-worn house with a tin roof and faded blue walls. The garden out front was still half alive, the same one her mother used to tend every morning. Amaka stepped, out slowly, legs unsteady. The boys jumped out behind her, eyes wide with curiosity. Robert stayed close but silent. Before they could reach the door, it opened. Her mother stood in the doorway, a dish towel in her hand. Her breath caught when she saw Amaka, and the towel dropped to the floor. For a second, no one moved. Then her mother rushed forward and wrapped her daughter in trembling arms. "My daughter, Amaka," she whispered, tears already falling. "You came back." Amaka clung to her, the years of distance, melting in that single broken embrace. Behind them, the boys looked on, confused but still. Robert rested a hand on each of their shoulders. "I missed you so much," her mother cried. "Every day I prayed you were safe. Every day." "I wasn't," Amaka replied softly, her voice shaking. "But I am now." From inside the house, slow footsteps approached. Her father appeared in the doorway, older now, frailer than she remembered. His hair had thinned, and the pride in his eyes had dimmed. He looked at her with something between shame and disbelief. "Amaka," he said, voice hoarse. She stiffened slightly. He stepped forward. "I was wrong. I was a proud, foolish man. I let my ego speak louder than my heart. I let you walk away, when I should have held on." Amaka stared at him, every muscle tight. Her heart pounded in her chest. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "But every day since, I've regretted it. Every single day." The silence stretched between them. The pain, the abandonment, the betrayal, it all hung in the air. "I had nothing," Amaka said. "I begged for food. I slept on the streets with your grandchildren. You threw me away like I didn't matter." "I know," he whispered, "and I will never forgive myself. But can you?" Her hands trembled. Robert stepped forward, gently touching her back, reminding her that she wasn't alone. Amaka looked at her sons, clean, smiling, alive. She thought of the nights she cried alone, the mornings she lied to them so they wouldn't be afraid. And then she looked at her father. "I forgive you," she said, tears falling freely now. "Not for your sake, for mine. I can't carry this anymore." The old man nodded, tears slipping down his wrinkled face. "Thank you, my daughter." Her mother ushered them inside. The boys explored the house curiously, giggling as they peeked into old rooms. Robert sat quietly in the corner, letting the family reconnect. That night, they all sat around the table. Her mother cooked jollof rice, okra soup, and fried fish, just like she used to. Laughter filled the space again. Amaka told stories of her boy's mischief, and for the first time, her father laughed too. Later, as they prepared to leave, her mother held her tightly at the door. "You are stronger than I ever was, and I'm so proud of the woman you've become." Her father turned to Robert and held out a hand. "Thank you for taking care of my daughter. You brought her back to us." Robert shook his hand firmly. "She's the one who found her way." They drove back under a sky painted with stars, the boys fast asleep in the back seat. Amaka leaned her head against the window. Her chest felt lighter, her soul quieter. She hadn't just rebuilt a life. She had mended a broken past. She had gone home, not just to a place, but to herself. The drums began before dawn, rhythmic, joyful, alive, in the heart of a sunlit compound. Adorned with palm leaves and strings of bright fabric, the sounds of traditional songs echoed through the morning. Women danced in colorful wrappers, their laughter rising like incense. The aroma of jollof rice, grilled goat meat, and sweet puff-puffs floated on the breeze. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a homecoming, a resurrection. Inside a modest room, Amaka stood before a mirror. Her outfit was regal, layers of gold and crimson fabric wrapped around her body like armor. Beads circled her neck and wrists, and a coral headpiece crowned her neatly braided hair. She looked radiant, But more than that, she looked whole. Her mother fussed over her earrings while her father, standing in the corner, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "You look just like your grandmother on her wedding day," her mother whispered. Amaka smiled, her heart pounding in waves of disbelief and gratitude. This day had once felt like a fantasy, a dream too far for someone who had walked barefoot through broken streets, carrying 2 children and a lifetime of silence. But today, she stood tall. In the courtyard, the twins ran barefoot in matching agbadas, chasing each other around the chairs and giggling as they tossed flower petals in the air. They didn't look like children who had ever known hunger. They looked like sons of joy. At the front of the gathering, Robert stood with quiet confidence. His outfit matched hers, elegant, deeply traditional, and perfectly tailored. But it wasn't the clothes that made him shine. It was the look in his eyes. He watched her emerge from the house, his breath catching as she stepped forward, one hand resting lightly on her father's arm. When their eyes met, she smiled, a real smile. No hesitation, no fear. The ceremony was simple, sacred. Elders gave their blessings. Friends sang. Her father placed her hand into Robert's and whispered with trembling lips, "Take care of her. Take care of them." Robert nodded. "With all that I am." Palm wine was poured. Laughter erupted. Gifts were exchanged. Stories were shared. And when the music returned, the dancing began. Amaka didn't just dance, she soared. She moved like a woman unshackled, her feet light, her arms open, her laughter bold. Robert joined her, and the crowd cheered. For the first time in years, Amaka felt the world lift her, not weigh her down. As night fell and stars lit the sky, the celebration continued with food, firelight, and singing. The twins curled up beside each other near the edge of the dance floor, eyes half closed, bellies full, hearts safe. Later at home, Amaka stood in the doorway of their new house. The walls were painted soft earth tones, the floors cool and smooth beneath her feet. Family photos already lined the entryway, some new, some old, all filled with life. Robert stepped beside her and wrapped an arm around her waist. "You're quiet," he said. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm just soaking it in, all of it. For so long I thought I'd never have a place like this again. A home." He kissed the top of her head. "You didn't just find a home, Amaka. You built one." She turned to him, tears welling, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. "I thought love was supposed to be loud," she whispered. "Overwhelming. But this love is quiet, steady, and real." Robert smiled. "And it's yours, always." From upstairs, a soft giggle echoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of small feet running. The twins were still awake. "Your sons," Robert said with a chuckle. She gave him a sideways look. "Our sons." He nodded. "Our sons." They walked upstairs together, hand in hand. Later, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, Amaka stood once more at the window of their bedroom, looking out over the city lights. She had known hunger. She had known fear. She had known what it was to be forgotten. But now, she knew love. She knew peace. She knew her own strength. She was not just a survivor. She was a wife, a mother, a woman with purpose. And finally, she was happy. If you watched until the end, comment the word "reborn," subscribe to the channel, and share this story with your friends and family.